Planet Earth and everything in it belongs to the Lord. He owns the chair you're sitting on, the room you're in, and the air you breathe. He owns every credit card in your wallet, and he owns the banks that process your every transaction. The Lord sustains the electronic pulses running through every computer and cell phone on Earth. He owns the trees and stars and rivers and seas. It's all his stuff. The temporal and the eternal, the seen and the unseen, are his. This fact, this truth, provides a unified field of knowledge and a unified view of everything. Let's call it a uniview. I think we can agree this is basic Bible 101. Not only does God own the earth and everything in it, he created people for the purpose of managing it. He made it very clear in Scripture that humans are to rule over the planet. You could say we are God's deputies on assignment with an earth-sized jurisdiction. He never rescinded that assignment, and God didn't give his stuff over to Satan. The purpose of education is to equip the next generation to rule well over this material world. I repeat, the purpose of education is to equip the next generation to rule well over this material world. Now here's the third mind-bending basic. There is no secular world, and there are no secular subjects. God created all things good in the beginning. Even though it got messed up in Genesis 3, he still holds all things together by the word of his power. Whatever is profane in this world is a twisted distortion of God's good creation. Yes, we live in a broken world that needs fixing, but it's still God's world, and there's nothing secular about that. Show me the place where the Creator is irrelevant, and I'll show you the so-called secular world. Show me any subject matter that can be divorced from its divine origin, continuing existence, and God-ordained purpose, and I'll show you a secular subject. But there is no such thing. I'm not as concerned about students in state schools becoming atheists as I am about students becoming dualists, with a split view of reality in which a so-called secular realm functions quite well on its own, where 98% of life happens, and so-called sacred spaces are confined to a personal prayer closet or to what goes on in church. In dualism, Christ is irrelevant to most of life, and we wonder why so many children from Christian families leave the church when they leave the home. They have no unified view of Christ's domain and their role in it. The biblical uniview has been forgotten. It's gone. It no longer exists in public schools, and it's rarely even mentioned in most of our churches. But since Christ's ownership is over all, how can he be irrelevant to banking, science, and the public square? This is the sacred secular divide, SSD for short. It's a mental infection. Webster said any system of education that neglects Christianity is essentially defective. Ironically, the mess America is in now can be laid at the feet of well-meaning Christian parents and the pastors who encourage them, who for decades put their children through 13 years of public education under the guise of wanting them to be salt and light. What happened was the children were infected by a new religion without God, called secular humanism, which John Dewey, the father of American progressive education, rightly called a faith, yes, a religion. And the children, as well as their parents, bought into the bogus idea that a so-called secular realm was not only necessary, but desirable. What we must all realize is that the sacred secular divide, a supposedly neutral and public replacement for Christianity, is actually anti-Christian. And there was no wall of separation placed between Dewey's godless religion and the public schools. We were conned. The whole country was conned, including the majority of Christians and church leaders. So is there a solution? Oh, indeed there is. Local churches can partner with families to create thousands of new learning centers all across the nation. There are roughly 350,000 churches in the U.S., which is 3.5 times the number of public schools. The setup, the infrastructure is already in place. It's time to restore the uniview.